Stephen Russell, aka the Barefoot Doctor, very sadly recently passed away, and today we're going to do a little tribute to him in memory. My name's Tim Walter, I'm a house healer and an alternative life coach, and this is where we work with the subtle energies of reality, working with things like meditation, mindfulness and dowsing to move towards a better state of well-being. So if that's the sort of thing that you're interested in, do click on the grey bell icon, click on subscribe, and we'll see you here each time we do a video upload. The Barefoot Doctor, aka Stephen Russell, was a popular Taoist healer, and he was a maverick. He was never one to follow the mainstream. He found joy in helping others in less favourable circumstances see their lives for their unique value within the overall scheme of the Great Tao. Stephen passed away a few weeks ago, and he'll be sadly missed, not only by his family, but by the thousands of people that he helped during his most recent lifetime here on planet Earth. In September of 2010, I was lucky enough to spend a few days with Stephen in his adopted homeland of Ibiza. The party capital of the world suited his twinkle in the eye, mischievous fun and refreshing outlook on life. And in that short time working with him, I learned a great deal, not only about him and his way of looking at life, but also about my own path. He was a very different man from my mentor Hamish Miller, who had passed away earlier in that same year. But what I saw in both of them was that they shared the same passion and energy and drive to help shift the world away from its low energy state, stuck in fear, greed, anger, and all those negative emotions with which we're all far too familiar. And so what I'd like to share with you now is some of the footage that my colleagues and I shot for a program about earth energy. It was a program I never completed, but I was working with Mike Shinton, who was at that time the founder of a daily motivational website called Time to Grow. And Mike we put as the presenter of the program. And I was firmly behind the camera, as I was in those days, with my good friend John Beck, ex-BBC cameraman. I wish Stephen well on his continuing journey now that he's stepped through into the next world, and he's no doubt even now nudging all those saints and spirits upstairs with his familiar twinkle in his eye and his naughty schoolboy grin. So here he is then, the masterful Barefoot Doctor, interviewed in the breathtaking Balearic Islands, talking about his early years, his introduction to the concept of Qi, and his early introduction to Taoism.
Barefoot Doctor is an old Chinese metaphor for a humble healer.
Okay.
And they were kind of a troop of healers that would go from village to village, mostly in rural areas. And their job was to keep people in a state of good health, psychologically, emotionally, physically. And I was trained as a doctor in Chinese medicine. I've also been a practitioner of full martial arts since I was 11 years old. And I trained in psychotherapy, hypnotherapy. I lived with the Native Americans for 4 years, studied shamanism. Oh yeah, and when I worked as an acupuncturist, I didn't used to wear shoes. I used to go barefoot because my teacher, who I was apprenticed to in America, he always said that you need to be barefoot as a sign of respect for the patient, so that you're in the humble position, and also so you can jump on the table and like press their backs and stuff like that. And he said also, if you're wearing trainers all day, your feet get sweaty. So I always used to work barefoot. And funnily enough, it started out as a name for my band at the time. This is back in the 80s, late 80s. And I was treating the rock journalist from the Observer at the time. And we were talking about the name of my band. And I said, I was thinking of calling it the Barefoot Doctor. He said, no, just call it Barefoot Doctor without let the press call it the Barefoot Doctor. And I got a column on a music magazine, or a sort of culture magazine, and I wrote it as Barefoot Doctor, just as an experiment really, and it was really, really popular, and so it took off that Barefoot Doctor was a writer as well, and then it just became my persona. I was a real little terrorist up to the age of 11. My dad had been a really good boxer, he taught me how to box, and I was getting into a lot of trouble at school for fighting all the time. So the headmaster called me and my dad in actually to talk about it, and it so happened that my dad, literally at that time, this is how beautifully things kind of synchronised, my dad's close friend had just started studying what they called a brand new martial art that had come out of Japan called Aikido, with this Japanese guy who was a healer, and teaching a small Aikido group of about 5 grown men, Lord this and this one property developer, and all these really posh guys, and they asked if I could join in the class as the sort of the 11-year-old mascot. He showed me this thing where he was an old guy, quite flabby sort of thing, and he pumped his body up to this like solid, huge rock of a guy, and he said, "Punch!" like in the belly. And I thought, I can't punch him. And I did a half of one. He said, "No, punch." And I gave him a full-on bang in the stomach with every bit of strength I had, and it just went into like nothing. There was nothing there. It just went and he laughed. He went, "Chi," you know, that's chi. What was interesting about it though was that the guys in the class, the men, the adults, wanted to learn healing. They were fascinated by this healing thing and meditation. So from this very early age, without even having any interest in healing or meditation, I was taught to meditate and how to heal people, how to channel energy through the hands. And because I was young, I was pretty adept at it, just because there's not much mental blocking in the way. So I'd take my mum's headaches away, or like with friends have belly aches, and it soon fell into this thing of de-stressing people. Even I remember when I was about 14, people, you know, my friends used to come and get me to calm them down, which was really lovely. And that I became a hippie when I was 13, and I was really fascinated by the mysticism aspects of it, and all the sacred symbols from yoga and Tai Chi and all this stuff was all part of the iconography. So that kind of drew me to these Eastern philosophies, and Taoism got me quite early on. I switched from Aikido to Tai Chi when I was in my late teens, and then I studied 3 other Taoist martial arts, the meditation system. Met R.D. Laing, who was a psychotherapist, who was the most amazing guy I'd ever met in my life. I didn't want to be a psychotherapist, never have been. I had to study with him, I knew that, he had to be my teacher. I've always been fascinated by the mind. To me, that's everything is mind, and how it functions. And he took me on as a student, which was really quite an amazing privilege. What that gave me was a sort of a lot of exposure to people who were really mentally disturbed, and got me over my fear of being around mad people. It got me over my fear of my own internal madness, which I believe we all have at some level. And also he introduced me to a whole kind of comparative religious study. He had me read the Bible, he had me read Janos Primal's Scream, Carl Durkheim's Horror, you know, every Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, Judaism, Kabbalah, every single possible kahuna, all the disciplines from around the world. And then I got exposed to the whole shamanistic thing, and that's where it connected back with my music, because they use the rhythm to talk to you in a certain way so that you go into a trance very quickly and bang, you're in it, you know. That I found fascinating. Came back to London in '83, set up a practice, started treating a lot of celebrities just because I was one of the first in town doing it, and then that built up a really big practice rather quite quickly. I kept that going 17 years. And my thing had always been, I mean, I can heal people with my, you know, one-on-one. I'm good at that, I can do that. It was always, how do I somehow spread this to everybody? There must be a way of spreading this intention, this love, this caring for one person to everybody, so that somehow everybody gets the healing. Like, it was this real urge to get the whole world happier, really, that's all. And that's what I've been focusing on. It's always a work in progress, and that's where you find me today, as a work in progress.
What was it about Taoism that hooked you?
The incredible simplicity of it all. The model is so clear and simple and circular, you know, that you have this generative presence, this consciousness, a priori consciousness at the heart of everything, that manifests itself via these two complementary and opposing forces of yin and yang, contraction and expansion, that are constantly cycling, and that through the friction and the friction and fission between those two are generated the 5 elements which inform all matter, all manifest reality. You know, quantum physicists have just come around to proposing that the God particle, that there are actually 5 God particles, which I'm sure is the 5 elements. And it's all body referenced, so rather than having to go into your head and psychologically work things through, you reference all your experience to being in your body. Your body becomes your arena of experience. So the focus is on how you're breathing, how you're relaxing, how you're situating yourself physically, and then that completely alters what goes on around you, because if you adjust your posture so that your spine is lengthened, your shoulders are broader, you've got more expanse internally, and then that makes your life more expansive, and then suddenly there are more beautiful things happening for you. The more you open up to it physically, actually, or psychophysically, the more it starts responding. And it was this amazing understanding of how the outside reflects the inside, and how you can take command to some extent of destiny, it seems, or at least ride the flow of destiny in a more optimized way. It also seems to address the way you relate with other people, because once you understand that each of us is an expression of this presence, the Tao, you can't help but have absolute respect for the other person, and in that respect comes a sort of an unqualified love for them as a being. And that seems to cut through all the usual surface divisions that we seem to uphold in modern society. It's not a religion, and it's not a set of precepts. It's a very clear, simple template, a philosophical template, with a whole massive collection of these psychophysical methods like Tai Chi, acupuncture, Feng Shui, that are a way of channeling the energy and learning to live with each other and with the environment in some sort of harmony. Because what it does is it gives you an ability to connect with each other on a soul level, and to me that's really what makes life worthwhile, these real connections that we have with each other. And it's done without any kind of external moralizing, by being properly centered in your skin and being aware that the other person is an expression or a manifestation of this amazing, mysterious presence. It gives you this natural respect for each other, and in that comes a set of inbuilt ethics that I think we all have, really. I broadly speaking call it being decent. It's not like you're perfectly enlightened all the time, but it gives you the tools to get off the stuff that blocks your enjoyment of being alive, which is the resentment, the anger, the frustration.